Hello there, my dear. If you find yourself struggling with perfectionism as you sit down to write, then you've arrived in the right place. Today, I'm going to be talking about why perfectionism is keeping you from writing what truly matters because it clouds the reality of what the writing process requires of you. Alrighty, let's get into it. So, first, I want to start with what perfectionism sounds like and what it may look like as you navigate the writing process. You can sit here and let me know in the comments if any of this sort of resonates with you. Um, Maybe when you sit down to write, you've written yourself an entire paragraph or a page of content and you end up deleting it all because you're just like, this isn't good enough. This is not getting me where I need to go, right? Like that's one particular way I've always seen clients and students struggle with perfectionism when they've like written this whole thing and then they're like, nope, none of it is good. And they delete it all and it's gone into the ethers of Lord knows where. Which breaks my heart because I hate losing writing. Another way perfectionism may look like when you sit down to write, maybe you finished writing something and then you're like delaying submitting it wherever it's supposed to go, whether it's posting it online, um, or anywhere else or submitting it for some purpose, right? You're delaying it because you're just like, not quite right. It's not there yet. Or maybe you're delaying it with these excuses of like, I have to find the right image to put in there and I have to go through all the words again and all that good stuff. Um, so that might be another way that perfectionism sort of runs rampant in your writing life. Another way is perhaps you're doing everything but actually writing. So you're like, oh no, but I need to get this thing that I need in order to write. I need to have this fabulous journal. I need to have this pen that I like. I need to organize my space. I think there's a right time and space for everything, but sometimes if you're struggling with perfectionism, then you're delaying actually getting to the writing at all, right? And creating these impediments between you and getting to the writing because you need to create like the perfect situation and parameter and space in which you're writing, right? And I always say, once you're doing that, you're keeping yourself from actually doing the thing that you signed up to do, which is to write. Sometimes, um, perfectionism looks like that very big voice. And by big voice, it might sound different in your mind and in your head than in mine. But sometimes these are the things that that voice says to me. This isn't good enough. It's never going to be good enough. I'm not a good writer. I'm not going to be a good writer no matter how much I work on this. And then the big one that usually comes out. It's like one of the big ones is the big question of like, who do you think you are for writing this? Who do you think you are for deciding you're going to share this or put this out in the world? Like when all of that is also what perfectionism could sound like in regards to the inner critic. And the sad part is that all of it just keeps you and limits your ability to actually do any writing and doing the writing that actually matters to you. So, in this next section, I want to talk a little bit about why perfectionism is actually limiting you as a woman in writing your personal stories. And the first big one is you're assuming that once you write something down once, and then like you write it down once and then you're done. Like that's what perfectionism in your mind is leading you to believe that like if you get it right the first time, then you could be complete. And the truth is that diminishes the actual reality of what it is to write anything because it's not a one-step process from your mind to the paper or to the page or to the electronic and digital space. It's not just a one-step process. It's like several steps. And so perfectionism will have you imagining if you get it just right, you won't have to go through the rest of the steps. And that's just not true. And mainly that's not true because that's not how writing works. Often people imagine they write something because they're transcribing what's actually moving through their mind, but you're not. That's not what writing is. Writing is actually being in development with your ideas. That the reason you actually can't get it down in the way that perfectionism wants you to is because you're not supposed to, because you're in the process of bringing the idea to life outside of you to exist out in the world. And that takes a multi-step process. It's not immediate because even when it does reflect what you think, you're going to wonder. and you're going to consider context, you're going to consider delivery, right? Things aren't just complete once you get them done and written down, especially if you're looking at sort of a longer and larger project that has multi steps to it, right? Like just because you have a book and you write a chapter doesn't mean you're done with that chapter. You're never going to go back, right? It means that this is the draft, and then you have to you have to move through creating all of them. Then you have to like zoom out and consider how are they connected to each. I mean, there's so many steps, right? And even in creating one chapter, there's several steps based on what it is you're writing, right? And so perfectionism convinces you that if you get it right the first time, you'll be complete. And I'm here to tell you that's not how it works. Even the most amazing writers have support, and they also have to return to what they wrote, not to improve it, but to refine it, to make it fit in with all the other components, to develop the idea that they placed on the page because it may shift and change, right? So that's how perfectionism is limiting you from writing your personal story. It's giving you this sense, this false sense that once you do it, you're complete, and that's not the way that it works. It also keeps you from actually connecting with those people who are meant to hear your story. So if people don't hear your story, that means you can't help them. And if you're on this channel, then most likely you're a person in a position as a coach or a healer or a leader or a speaker that's out there who knows they want to make an impact. So perfectionism, by keeping you from actually doing the writing, then actually limits your ability to distribute and to disseminate this wonderful knowledge, right, that you have within you, which means you can't make the impact you've come here to make, right? Perfectionism also, the third thing, perfectionism also assumes that you must be complete in order to share the thing that you want to share. Right. So if you're on my channel and I know that you're a woman who has like amazing things to share with people and you have this ingrained life-based wisdom as well as like professional wisdom that you're here to share with others. And sometimes the way perfectionism shows up, it's like you have to be complete. You need to have learned the entire lesson. You need to have figured out everything, hit this certain pinnacle in order to rationalize sharing your story. And that's just ridiculous, right? Because if you look at the internet, you'll notice real quick, it looks like people have made it, but they haven't. And the people that you're probably most attracted to are people still figuring that shit out, right? Um, so that's another way that perfectionism sort of keeps you from writing your personal story. It assumes that you yourself must be perfect and complete in order to feel worthy and of value enough to share it, which is some bullcrap, right? Um, And the last thing I'll say about how perfectionism keeps you from sharing your stories, it assumes that if you don't do it right the first time, that you won't ever get it right. And that's the scariest thing about navigating perfectionism is this notion that like, if I get it right, it's amazing. But if I don't get it right, that means I'll never have a chance to figure out how to make it quote unquote right. And that's just not true, especially in the online world where we're consistently and always engaging with people's work, right? And there's always a time where people can change things, change their opinion, change their writing, change their perspective, share new stories, right? All right, so this is the moment in the video where we stop, drop, and write, right? So as you know, in every video, I stop at some point just to bring you back if you have gone to do other things slash gotten distracted, um, because we know, right? And we honor the importance of being intentional and taking some time to reflect. And so today I'm going to invite you to explore what does your perfectionism sound like and what does it look like as you move through writing anything? Right? Be honest with yourself. What are the ways that it keeps you from writing what you know in your heart you want to? What do you wish you could change about your perfectionism and why? And in what ways is your journey with perfectionism also a part of your story that you're here to share with other people? How might those people benefit from hearing it? So I pose all those questions to you to help you slow down, maybe if you're doing a million other things, just reflect on them and consider them. If you're not and you have a handy dandy notebook, Google Doc, journal a little bit about them. To give you a sense of who I am, I'm Dr. Raquel, and I help visionary women of color who carry so much for their communities move from only writing what's expected in educational, professional, and polished environments to courageously sharing their personal stories that reflect their full lived experience so they can inspire others and make the impact they know they're here to make. So, if this video has been helpful thus far, make sure to hit subscribe and let's get back into it. So, what's the real truth about perfectionism, right? I want to end on this note and consider where you could move forward after, right? Because I have a couple of interesting exercises that you can take part in to help you when you're moving through um, these bouts of perfectionism. So, one, the real truth about perfectionism is that it reveals if you're any kind of writer and you've moved through any process to submit something for a purpose or for a reason, then you know that the writing process is actually not one that's just one step, right? And sometimes you're clinging too tightly to what should be rather than just accepting what is. And so that's the truth about perfectionism is that it reveals that you actually are forgetting like how it actually works, which is everything is a process. Because if you got it right the first time, then it would be complete, but that's not how it works, right? I also want to call you to consider what are like the systems, familial, societal culture that you're a part of that are feeding these ideas of perfectionism that you're now placing on your writing, right? And why is that something so important to that particular system? And is that something that you want to uphold as it relates to writing specifically? Because what I know from my upbringing in the US and through the academy is that perfectionism is like a construction of capitalism and the patriarchy to create a sense of being that doesn't actually reflect the reality of what it takes to be a human and to actually do good writing, which is that it takes time to refine it, to create the writing that you're really proud of, right? In my community, people can write for 10 minutes and look at it and be amazed at what they have, right? But what it takes to take that writing and then put it out in some way that's more formal, that takes another layer of effort, labor, time, and care. And so good writing does happen intuitively, like immediately in the moment. But then when you're sitting here trying to take something beyond it just being for you, when you decide that you're going to share it or you're going to put it somewhere, that's the next step, right? So that's what I want you to remember as you're moving through these bouts of perfectionism is that it removes the truth of how the writing process works, which is you're never gonna get it right the first time. That's not the point. The point is to express it and then figure out how to refine it, right? Also, perfectionism, often when we're in our bouts of perfectionism, we assume that those who are amazing at writing don't suffer with any kind of problem, that they're like magical beings because they're writers and they've been doing it for so long, and that they've got something that we don't got. That like they were natural born communicators that have like this amazing gift, and like we just don't. When right, like in our minds and society, at least in the US, we've been trained to believe that if someone does something for a living, they must love it and it must come absolutely natural to them. And they must not at all struggle with it. Especially in the creative arts. I think we have this great and ridiculous idea and trope and stereotype that really diminishes the amount of labor it takes to create amazing creative work, whether it's a painting, some writing, a dance, right? Like it, for it to look as effortless as it does, folks, it takes a little time. It takes a little practice. It takes a lot of refinement, right? But nobody sees that. What do they see when they look at a work of a creative piece? They see the final component, right? So when you're beginning your journey to write something that takes an exorbitant amount of time because you decide to commit to a project, or you're like, oh, I'm going to do this blog and I want to do this regularly. And you realize, wow, this takes a lot of effort. I'm like, yeah, yeah. So those gifted people who you think are amazing, yes, I imagine and I truly believe people have gifts for the written word. That doesn't mean it's like magic and it just happens, right? And this is an exercise I'm going to give you to do. That's a fun one. It's very simple. right? Because I don't believe any big writer, and any big name that grows that has become as big as they are in the US, in your country, globally, they have never done any of their written work without some support, either from the publishing company that they hired, if they hired one, from others in their life who they get to read stuff before it even goes public. I mean, people gather a great amount of support from editors, from people they love, from their writing groups, from their communities in order to get their work out in the world, right? And so, one fun exercise I'm going to give you to do is if you're reading a book, or you're listening to a book on Audible, turn to the author's note at the end. There is this section before the book ends. I don't know if Audible does this for their books per se, but I know physical books. So, like, think about your favorite book and your favorite author. If you have one and you have it on a bookshelf, pick it up, turn all the way to the author's note and read it. And I encourage you, everything that you read, read the stuff that's at the beginning or the end, because there's always something in there that's literally in honor of all the people that helped them create the thing, right? Because from spending decades reading these parts of the book, you will notice like how many people these authors thank for their support to get things done in their project. I mean, it's beautiful. Some of them go on, right? Even when I wrote my dissertation, I think there was an intro and I could put it in there. So whatever you're reading, like take a moment to, if especially if it's a published piece of writing or something that's extensive, look to see in the beginning or at the end if there's any like tribute to the grandiose amount of folks that made it possible. Um, for these people to create their writing because they will reference anyone from the people who helped them with the publishing process to people that are in their personal lives to communities that they went to for the writing before to the divine, whatever they believe in as greater power than them. Like literally, it is so beautiful. And so as you notice and you take a look, this is another part two of the exercise. Who do you think you're going to thank as you complete your writing project, no matter what it is? Even if it's just like, oh, I'm going to do this blog and I want to do this amazing thing and it's going to have this many components to it, whatever it is you're working on writing wise, or a short story or a set of poems, like who is it you're going to thank when you've completed it? Who will you say is integral to the development of that project? Because if you announce it now, then you can ask, right? I always say when you ask, usually it's fulfilled. Like your requests are usually fulfilled by the divine. And so if that's the support you desire, it will come to you and you'll have to determine is that the kind of support that you want, right? So consider that small exercise when you're thinking about perfectionism and comparing yourself to other people and thinking about how easy it may be for them, but how more difficult it is for you. Like, let's anchor this back in reality. Let's go pick up some evidence out in the real world, pick up a book and be like, oh darn, I thought they did it all by themselves. Like, yeah, they had to write that shit. But that project wasn't complete without the support of many other folks, right? And finally, what I want to say is technically the best kind of writing, like the best kind of writing, isn't actually perfect according to grammatical rules. It's quirky. It reveals so much about the writer. And so maybe the real question here isn't what's perfect to the outside world, but what is the perfect way that you would like to take the time to express the story that you have on your heart? That doesn't mean the writing is perfect or that you are, but that you did it in a way that literally lights you up and feels so, I don't know, I wrote here like it makes you feel like you're able to sing, right? Because you're able to express something at a harmony level that feels so right and aligned for you. And I wonder too, like if we anchored in the idea that like the best writing is actually not the most perfect writing, but rather the most needed writing for the particular task that's being asked of us, how much more open would we be, right? Because even if you consider your favorite authors, there are things that they're probably doing that aren't quote unquote perfect that they decided to play with. And that's what you get to do too. Alrighty, so the best way that I have found to truly accepting my unique and my quirky voice and my particular approach to writing is by approaching the writing process with a whole lot more care, love, and joy. And so in my next video, I'm going to share with you how simply you can begin to shift perfectionism so that when it comes up and you're knee deep in a writing project, you'll have a sense of how to move through it in a way that is so just loving. And so I'll see you there.